method.
We have 3 different recordings. We
I
have
know.
that. We have
My favorite show.
But
we
is
have the
YouTube
Zoom,
running right now?
and then we have the one downstairs.
Is it running right now, YouTube?
YouTube is not. Nope, that was not running.
When you take a
Not
time
get
out and
that
fix
started.
that?
So let's take a time out 1 second. Let me get that up and running.
Yeah.
Okay, YouTube, it's now running. It should be live.
So just FYI, I just looked up the list of menu items. The language that we adopted looks like it's verbatim from what was in the state guidelines.
Okay.
So,
Are we permitted to deviate from the state guidelines?
well, they gave us these menu items, so I guess when we work out the details, there's latitude, but we just adopted that exact language, which seems appropriate.
Yeah.
It feels like we have a little time on 0.4 since we're only required for 3 if we don't have it fully operational at the moment. With the other 3.
Shane, how many of those points from the state were given to us? How many total ones were we allowed to select from?
Well, if somebody's better with the alphabet than me, A through W. So what, how many is that? 25?
25, 24?
A through X.
I think I failed the test on how many letters are in the alphabet.
23.
I could count them real quick.
There's under 24. No.
The reason why I bring that up, and I don't know the level that Gordon maybe or Lon, those who weren't on the planning commission, the planning commission obviously went through and selected these 4 out from that list of quite a few of them. It might be beneficial for us in the city council to also see that list and see if there are any on that list that we would put a higher priority than these 1 through 4, as opposed to just approving verbatim what the planning commission sent up.
Well, I think they sent, because I was on planning commission, we didn't just send 4. I think we sent more than 4 with it ranked of preference, and then sent it to council and said, you guys make that final selection.
And I do remember the council spent a fair amount of time looking at this. And I remember David Church going through the list with the council and that.
Yeah, I think there were like actually 5 or 6 from
Mhm.
planning, and then it got whittled down to what it is now.
My question is, for example, Greg Gordon, has he seen that list as we're voting on this now or discussing it?
I don't think so. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think he has. Yeah, so I'll see if I can find that, or if Shane has a copy of it right now, he could forward it. But
So the document I found, it's from the Utah League of Cities and Towns. It's a summary of that Senate Bill 34. So this says 4th substitute. We'll find the actually adopted section of the code and send that out.
Mayor.
Yes.
I think I understand, or I understood though, before, if we wanted to modify our policy again and include another one in and eliminate one, we just simply had to have 4 of those options.
You're right. I think we're stuck with the same 4 that we selected originally.
I
we can
think it
switch them
might,
out.
we might only need to have
And it's-
3.
yeah.
Well,
Actually,
there's 3 now, but
Yeah.
I know that the reason we have 4 is because they pushed that we had to have that. And now that we don't, and I'm good with 3.
I'm not sure these policies that we have 4 of in this document before us tonight. Actually, I think two of these are part of the same menu item, but I'll have to verify that.
Okay,
I remember adopting 3
okay.
of those. Is that what you remember, Austin?
yeah, that's true. I think 2 of these might be part of the same menu item. think you might be right. And we just broke them down into 4 so that it was more easy to define what we're gonna do.
And to Jessica's point, I was also on the planning commission when this went through. We selected 3 way back then. I'm not saying that the planning commission didn't take it, add more, but you're saying then it went on to the city council and we've already approved this?
Yeah, this was approved by the city council, so they adopted this. They were kind of under a time frame that they had to meet with the state, so they
Yeah.
did adopt this.
What year was that adopted?
I'd have
I think it was
have to check.
2019.
I don't.
I was gonna say 2 years.
And
ago,
I
yeah.
don't think they actually adopted the 3 that planning commission sent. I mean, the ones that we ranked, I think they maybe.
I think there was some difference
Mhm.
between what the planning commission recommended versus what
Mhm.
the city council ultimately adopted.
Yeah.
I'd love to listen to that meeting. If you could send it out, that'd be great. I don't know which one that was.
Yeah, let me see if I can find, so you're referring to the city council meeting where it was adopted, is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay, yeah, I'll see if I can find that audio recording and send it out to the council. All right, well, did we want to return to item 1.1 and kind of discuss that? Are we okay with the way we have it right now? Are we accessory dwelling units are only allowed in an owner occupied dwelling? Or is there interest in possibly allowing a detached accessory dwelling unit?
When we spoke earlier today, we talked about the stipulation that you have 5 acres if you're gonna build a guest house is in our ordinance. I think that's worth evaluating, that if we should require that, or if we want to reduce it perhaps to a smaller parcel. Maybe it's not an acre, but maybe it doesn't have to be a 5 acre. What would the council think about that, reevaluating that requirement?
I mean, we've got this tension right now where it's happening. And so,
Regardless.
mhm.
Yeah.
So essentially, right now, where an accessory dwelling unit has to be within the home and it has to be owner occupied, this would be a change of a detached accessory dwelling unit.
Yeah.
So,
Couldn't we make it though, so that the setbacks and the distances make it so that it isn't infringe upon too much other area, that it
Yeah.
stays closer or whatever, as we look at it,
I think that
Is
would
there a
have to be
way-
part of it.
way to,
Yeah. Height restrictions,
Yeah.
things like that.
yeah,
Because what's happening is if we're looking at sheds that are 12 feet tall out of 5 or 10-foot setback, we've got 30-foot tall pool houses on a 5-foot setback. And so there, again, I use the word tension, like maybe this gives the ability to not have that continue to, I mean, if you want to talk about really impeding someone's view, they think they've built on a lot where this person has a setback and they can't put another dwelling, and then all of a sudden there is another house.
Yeah.
yeah.
10 feet.
Yeah, so right now, with these accessory buildings, just let's say it's a shed or a garage or something like that. The height is limited to 20 feet. The side setback in most of our zones is 10 feet
Correct.
and the rear setback is 15. So the ordinance allows them, and this is measured to the ridge line, not to the midpoint. The ordinance allows them to go up to 30 feet, but they need 2 more feet of additional setback for every additional foot of height above 20 feet. So you could get up to the 30 feet, but you would have to have more
But you're
setback.
You get
A
penalized
30-foot
quite a bit.
setback, which
Yeah.
is equal to a home, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
You're now at a
From the
home
street.
setback.
Yeah. I think some things to be considered, when looking at something like this, these detached accessory dwelling units is trying to make sure that you don't end up with one in a basement and a detached and have essentially three families on one property instead of two.
Because one of these issues we have to consider in that is parking and crowding of streets, because there are more people living on in a smaller space. It's a density issue, obviously, but there are other ramifications that come with it. In trying to comply and enhance our affordable housing piece, we also may create problems that we haven't thought through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've lived in a city that allowed this, and it was not a desirable situation. You know, you have people living in backyards effectively, right? They don't tend to have the same insulation. It's a strange quality of life where they are sneaking around the side of a house, you know, along through a gate, and you go back across the lawn into basically a shed, which is, you know, a supposed habitat. It's, you know, kind of worse for the renter. It's because it's not, that's kind of your same quality of home. Yeah, and there tends to be a lot more street parking inevitably.
Yeah, and historically, the city has opposed this concept.
Yeah.
You know, what we're dealing with now, and it's pretty much on a weekly basis, there's a lot of very nice detached accessory buildings being constructed. And it goes from, we want a bathroom in this shop or garage or, you know, toy house or whatever. The next thing is, hey, we need a kitchen out here. And then the next thing you know, it doesn't take much to add a bedroom and we have a detached accessory dwelling unit.
And not all of that is divulged to the city up front, you know,
Right.
it's added to later when all the permits are issued.
Yeah, and whatever direction we end up going, it'd be very beneficial for staff to have some more guidelines in the ordinance to help with this, because right now we have a definition of a guest house, and it basically includes a kitchen, a bathroom, and a bedroom. But guest houses are only allowed with special approval if your lot is 5 acres or larger.
Right.
And that special approval is, and I've always thought that those came to city council, and we haven't had one to my knowledge. But it actually goes to planning commission, and they are the approval body, as you know, the way our ordinance is written right now. So,
Well, and there's a home, and I think it's a 4-acre lot, and they wanted to build a second small home or on there, and they weren't allowed, right? So they did, you know, they added on to their single home in an attached way, right? Not to rent out, but for additional bedrooms. So.
Yeah, on that same note too, I mean, under our current ordinance, if you merely attach that guest house with a common roof or a common wall, it could just be as simple as a breezeway. That's now considered part of the main home, and we don't consider it a guest house anymore.
So, there is a specific situation in town, I may have mentioned it to you earlier, where that is the case. They're gonna build a breezeway, but then now they're also being told they have to do some modifications in the original dwelling. Does that make sense? Is there a situation where that would be required?
I'm aware of a situation, but I don't know about that part of it.
Okay.
But
Could be a sidebar after the meeting.
yeah, the other, Austin described that well. The other thing that goes along with that, that's part of our ordinance, is if it's an accessory, like an apartment that's part of the main floor, it can't occupy more than 25%.
25% of the main floor no more than 25% of the main floor can be dedicated to an accessory dwelling unit.
Yeah, so if it's a basement apartment, it can be the entire basement floor, but if it's, as Austin described, something attached by a breezeway or something like that, little accessory apartment sits here, the main house sits here, it can't be more than 25% of the total main floor area.
So if you have a 4,000 square foot main level, and you want to build a transom, or what are they called when you connect the roof?
Breezeway.
A
Breezeway.
breezeway. So you build a breezeway, the maximum footprint of that piece can only be 1,000 feet.
Let's see.
If it's a
1,000
4,000 foot
Yes, yeah.
main level.
If it's a 4,000 square foot.
Mhm.
Great.
Well,
Well, you would take the total, so it wouldn't quite be 1,000. I'm just doing the math.
yeah, it'd be a total, so you take the total, so it'd have to
Yeah,
be no more than
Okay, so
25% of
two
the total
combined,
square
it could be
footage.
25%
Yeah.
of the two combined.
right.
places.
That's
Okay.
correct.
Shane or Austin, can I ask, what's the objective of this work session? Meaning, if this was already approved back in 19, are we looking to modify it, or are we just trying to learn what was approved back then? What's the end objective that we want to get out of this work session?
I mean, in my mind, it's, is the council happy with this element of the general plan, the way it's written? We had a deadline to adopt 3 of those. The legislature created a deadline to adopt 3 of those menu items. So we did that. It was done in a general sense. They didn't say you have to implement them by this deadline, but you have to say, we are going to do these 3 things by this deadline. And then we're expected to implement those.
And those 3 things were what? Because we have 4 things here, so I guess one's been added since then? Or do we have 4 back then?
Isn't our moderate income plan on our website?
It is, yeah.
I'll pull that up real quick and we'll read out a bit.
But are you asking us if we want to change it at all right now? Is that what we're doing, or? I'm just kind of wondering what.
I think that, and then part of it, I think, goes back to how do we want to implement the items that were selected?
Yeah, I think that's a big key. Part of it is, for example, the mortgage assistance thing. How do we want to do that? Do we want to budget a certain X dollar amount? And do we want to allow up to 5 applicants to apply for it per year? I mean, those kind of little details. We want to kind of get that
So
as part of the discussion, but also if we want to modify anything that's in this element here, that could also be done.
Well, and I think that's where the work comes in, because if we look at item 1, for example, that's under the current guidelines that we have, those accessories have to be within the home or attached to the home. But if we have a discussion about expanding that to independent dwellings on the same property or any other deviation from that, we're gonna have to devote quite a bit of time to that. So, but the question I would have to the council is, and to you, Austin, is does this currently meet the need? If we left things just the way they are, does it address the state recommendations closely enough that we wouldn't have to expand it to detached dwellings? Or do we need that to get there?
I would say every year we're required to show a progress report. And so if we can't show that we've made any progress from year over year, that's going to be hard to argue that we're doing something actively to promote moderate income housing.
But I think the state clearly is not requiring detached.
They're not, no, that was just an idea.
Yeah. Well, because again, there are certain things we don't have control over. Right now, we encourage and allow accessory apartments, but we can't require it. So it's not like we can help meet numbers for the state by going in and creating it somewhere where it doesn't exist. So I guess, is it enough that we're encouraging it, accepting it, and promoting it? Because if the answer is yes, then I woid say we leave it alone. We shouldn't be changing ordinances to accommodate growth that we don't necessarily, I don't want this to come out wrong, but if it's not something that we need to do as a city, then why would we do it? Because I think some people will view it as compromising, what standards they moved here for or whatever. I don't think people want to start seeing their streets crowded up with accessory apartments any more than is necessary.
And then the other issue here is, do we want to take one of the policies off since we're required to have 3 of them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did find the minutes from October 22nd, 2019. And we did have 1.1 through 1.4. And that is what the council adopted. Let's see. unanimously. There were 3 council members present at that meeting.
And are we able to confirm, are these separate items or are 2 of these count as one?
And that's, I'll work on that here. October 22nd, 2019.
Does it hurt us in any way to have 4 if we don't need 4? Jason, are you seeing an issue with us having one more than we really need?
Again, I don't know the background process, but listen to Austin and the way he presents it. If we set policies up, they're going to want to see action on each of those policies. If we say we haven't done anything on a particular policy, it makes us look poorly as a city. So what we want to do is want to pick the right number of policies, at least 3, and make sure we're doing something on each one of those policies. If we have 1.4, for example, there, and we don't set up and provide mortgage assistance program for employees, I think that would make our city look bad. And so, if 3 is enough, should we do 1 through 3? And if 4 is enough, then we better start a process of, making sure we have funding and budget for that additional item.
Right.
So yeah, I would say the question is, do we get rid of one of them?
Right, because arguably we may be a little bit behind on that one, but we can remove it and keep it on the back burner until it's required or when we decide to move forward on that one.
Which one? Number 4?
4 potentially, if that's not required at this point.
I actually like number 4 quite a bit.
Yeah,
Because I think it does help our city. It helps us retain good people and it helps those people live here.
Yeah.
But
So what would be wrong with continuing to work on that then, still figuring out how we can make that work?
leaving it on the list or taking it off and still working on
Well,
it?
yeah, I suppose we could take it off right now, work on it, have it presented again. That this is the format and the application process, the application, everything about it developed more fully so that then we can, if we're not meeting the other 3 items that were there, that we can. So I guess the senior housing thing would be one of those, if that falls into that $1 million, it doesn't even meet the moderate income housing qualification.
Right.
Then we do have to
And I think,
figure out something else on that.
I think item 4 requires the most amount of money and work, but it also might be the most worthwhile. It might
not be possible. And that's my concern.
What was that, Jason?
It also might not be, it'd be interesting to see what the numbers are. If, for example, we wanted to support a police officer, or a couple police officers living within the city boundaries of Alpine, what kind of burn or what kind of budget we would have to create to allow them to live in Alpine based on property values here. It'd just be interesting to see what those numbers are and if it's even possible based on budgetary issues.
It's definitely a subsidy. The way West Valley has it is, what it was at $165 a month and up to $5,000.
And $10,000 down payment on your
Oh,
mortgage
10,000.
or whatever, yeah.
Yeah. So, you're right, Jason. If it's a limitless program, that could be a pretty big burden on the city. But if we had, 2 or 3 or whatever to offer, and we could budget for that. I like the idea of our own officers living here if we can help accommodate it, but we can't pay their way. Okay. We got to wrap this session up. Yep. So let's, Austin, if you could do the research and find out if we should be combining 2 of these points into 1. And if not, if we have 4 separate and individual as it appears, then maybe it is a good idea to drop 1, because I agree, Jason, your point of having to be accountable to anything that we start. We need to make sure we're being careful there. And then I would like to look, is West Valley the only city you could find that had that kind of a subsidy program?
Yes, that's the only one I could find.
We found any outside the state? If we look outside
I
the state?
haven't really looked outside the state.
Okay.
Hiram during this meeting sent us some information to review.
Oh, good. Okay.
So we'll take a look at that.
All right. So before, as we wrap up, council, is there anything else that you'd like to see Austin and staff come back with in the next discussion on this topic? Okay. So with that, we'll go into the next part of our meeting. Public comment. Oh, I'm sorry, no, consent calendar. Lon, you gonna take the lead on that?
I have made some corrections to the minutes. Those minutes were sent out to everyone. And so based on the corrections I have sent, unless there's others that have sent anything in, I'd make a motion that we approve the consent calendar with the correction to those minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second, motion by Lon Lotz, second by Greg Gordon. Any questions on the motion or comments? All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Carla, did I hear you vote?
Yep.
Okay, Jason?
yep,
All right, motion passes. We have, we'll set aside time for public comment. We're happy to see a few people come into the room. If there's anybody who'd like to come forward, and Austin, I'll ask you to look at any questions that are popping up online right now or any comments. If anybody would like to come forward and make any kind of public comment that is not currently on the agenda, you would have 3 minutes to do so. And so we'll open that time now. Austin, do you have anything?
We did receive one comment. Someone is just asking about our in the newsletter, we had some, it talked about the large animal ordinance changes, and they just wanted more details on that. So I can just respond to that email and forward them that information.
Isn't it?
Well, is it part of public comments? So should it be read
It
aloud?
came to our admin account, which we typically take for public comment.
Okay, so why don't you go ahead and read the questions and
Okay.
give whatever comment.
Yeah,
you'd like.
okay, so it says, hello. The city newsletter mentions a public hearing regarding large animal ordinance changes. However, I can't find any details on what the proposed changes are. Can you please provide the proposed amendment details? Regards, Liv JQ.
Okay. All right. Do you want to answer the question?
Yes, so those details will be located on our website. We will post those this Friday. What the new, so we have had proposals on what the ordinance will look like, but a new drafted language will be posted this Friday, which will be discussed in the meeting on the 16th, which is a week from today. So you can find that on alpinecity.org.
Okay, thanks, Austin. Was that the only comment?
That's all, yeah, correct.
Okay. And seeing no one else coming forward, we will end our public comment section of the meeting and move on to reports and presentations. And Shane, we have a nice introduction to make, right?
Yeah, Tommy Youngblood has been on board with this here for what, 3 weeks or so, maybe? 3 weeks as our new code enforcement officer. Those don't move for some reason. So Ted stuck around for a week or so and is still available for questions, but Tommy's jumped right in and is taking on that role. And maybe let's let Tommy tell you a little bit about himself here.
Yeah, I'll keep it brief. What's that question? I'm Mayor, City Council. Tommy Youngblood. I live up in Midway in 1989. I worked in Park City for code enforcement and events for about 20 years. And I'm looking forward to bringing that talent and knowledge and helping Alpine through its transition of changing a little bit.
I think it's great that you have background in public events as well. That's going to help out during Alpine Days a lot.
I love your community here. It's awesome. It's changing drastically, just like most of the state.
Yeah.
I know you guys you're all faced with challenges that are not going to be fun, but we have to keep our heads down and remember what this community is about and go forward.
Yeah, we're really glad to have you, Tommy. Thank you for being here. Does that have any questions for Tom?
And feel free to email me if you want. And I'm looking forward to meeting you all and taking you around and getting you to know as much about Alpine as possible. Do my job well.
If someone complains about their neighbor's shed, Tommy's the guy. Or other things. So,
It's nice to meet you.
Thank you
Yes,
very
Contact
much.
me anytime.
Welcome aboard.
Thanks for coming tonight.
and also, Cammy, this is,
Yeah.
you want to come up here for a minute? Put you on the spot. So Cammy Burgess, is a resident of Alpine here. She's been involved with Alpine Days in various roles in the past. I haven't had the opportunity to work directly with her, but I've heard nothing but good, and she is going to be our Alpine Days chairperson.
Yes.
And so we're going to be talking about that a little bit later in the meeting. But since she was here, I wanted to take the opportunity to introduce her to any of you that don't know her. So, and if you want to put a plug in for volunteers.
We want volunteers. We want as many volunteers as we can get.
And she's already done that on some social media platforms and things. And, but I know that Greg's wife had talked to me a few months ago about wanting to be involved with that. And I have her contact information that
We'd love to have
I will get to you.
I've done it since Curry was involved, so.
So
I was involved.
quite a while.
Yeah.
I've been on the committee a while, so I got a lot of ideas. We'll see
Good.
if it goes well.
All right.
That's great. Thank you, Cammy. Do we, I forgot I was gonna ask, I had a question that popped in my head, but. Okay, we'll move on. Thank you, Cammy, for being willing to do that. And we'll move on to the financial reports, Shane.
Yeah, so I'll just be real brief with this unless you have questions. I know it sounds like kind of a broken record, but things still look really good. If you look at some of our different funds, there's quite a bit of money still in there, and that's because projects are just starting up for the spring that will be complete by the end of June. As far as our sales tax goes, through December, so 6 months of the budget year, we are up 14.5% over the same period the previous year. So that's still looking really good. Anyway, any questions? No?
No. Any questions from council?
Mayor, I guess I did have one question. We talked last week about the little bit of the shortfall on the road thing. Is that we're covered then, still have plenty of money
Yeah.
to take care of that money that was moved or that we didn't pay last budget year?
Yes, we have reserves in our Class C road funds,
Okay.
as well as our capital improvement fund. So we are covered there.
And I know it depends on weather, but are we gonna see our typical chip seal and resurfacing season in late in August?
Yeah, it'll be probably August to September. Hopefully we can get it moved up into July.
Yeah.
It always, I don't know, it seems like it's a challenge with kind of getting budget ready, getting things bid out so that they could start July 1st.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the goal, to keep moving that up.
Okay, and do we have a map of what's gonna be done?
Not yet. That's something that we are working on.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd like to get that on the website so people can see that coming for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, we're trying to work on kind of a multi-year plan, at least a tentative plan.
Yeah.
That could be subject to changes, so we don't get totally locked in if we
Yeah.
have a road blow up in a bad winter or something
Right.
like that, but we are working towards that.
Good deal. Okay, we'll move on to the action items. Item A, accessory building setback. I know you had quite a discussion about this in the last meeting.
And we ran out of time.
Yeah,
Moving into a few things.
so Austin, do you want to kind of bring us up to speed on where we are right now to start that conversation again?
Yes, yes. So let me go ahead and, so you'll see here at on the screen, this is the last motion that was made. Greg Gordon motion to table the ordinance 2021-06 until the next city council meeting. Jason Thielen seconded the motion. So that really doesn't summarize the discussion that we had, but we had a long discussion, and essentially out of that discussion, there were two kind of key factors that came out of it. One was that most of the council seemed to be in favor of a 12'6" height. And the second was that most of the council was in agreement that a 2-foot setback, minimum setback for an accessory building would be okay. So those were kind of the two key items that everyone agreed upon, but there was a number of other questions that still remained. And so out of that discussion, we've kind of drafted some language here that hopefully touches on what most of the council members' concerns were. And so we'll just go, I'll pull it up here on the screen and we can look at the new language. This is different language than what you saw in the last meeting. Again, with modifications based upon the conversation that was had at the last meeting. So the first part of the ordinance here is that side and rear setback on interior lot lines. Accessory buildings shall be set back not less than 15 feet from the rear lot line and 10 feet from the side, except that a 2-foot minimum rear will be, or side setback shall be required when the following conditions are met. And so that's the minimum 2 foot. And then basically, if you can meet all of these items, I through VIII or Roman numeral 8, those are the criteria that you have to meet to qualify for an exception. And so in black are the existing ones, and the new language is here in green. So if we move down to item 5 or V, you'll see that it says the building will not be placed on land designated as a recorded easement, such as a utility or trail easement, unless the owners of said easement agree to allow the encroachment. Documentation of the agreement shall be provided to the city. And so in the last meeting, it was Ron Robinson, resident of Alpine, that came to the meeting, and he brought with him 2 examples. One was a vacation of an easement, which basically means the utility company is saying we are never going to put anything in that easement, so we're vacating our rights to it. And then he brought in, and then the other example was the utility company still had an interest in using the easement, but they would allow you to build there, but you're kind of doing it at your own risk, was kind of the way the document was written. And so the idea is we would allow someone to build in an easement if they can get these signed documents from the appropriate utilities, whether that be the gas, the power, or the city itself. If we can get all of those sign-offs, then, why not allow them in the easement is the idea. And so as subheadings under that item, under item 5, we have these 2 other sub requirements. And the first is when utilities are present in an easement, the building should not require permanent attachment to the ground and can be moved or relocated within 24 hours. Fines shall be issued for buildings that cannot be moved within 24 hours. And then item 2, the owner acknowledges that they bear all cost of moving a building, including damage to the property, in the event an easement needs to be accessed. And so the idea is if you're going to build an easement and there's no utilities in the easement, but it's just an easement for the sake, because it was recorded that way, that's different than if there are actual live utilities in the easement. That changes the scenario. And so that's why they have these 2 additional requirements that promote having a movable structure.
Can I ask a question on that? So does the city want to take on that burden of documenting and the paperwork that easements have been released for every shed that, goes in? I mean, is this a matter of state law that is, basically covers this and applies here anyway? Do we need to have, kind of some redundancy with city law, or is that not the case?
as far as I can tell, it's really it's the city ordinance that is more restrictive than the state law. So the city law right now, as it stands, we just don't allow anybody to build in an easement. So that's our current standard. This is to hopefully allow some more flexibility and allow people to build in an easement with conditions. And so if we're just going off the state law, the state law doesn't really have this.
I don't think the state cares about setbacks.
Yeah, they don't really care. So it's really a city thing.
So again, as part of the processes, is this something that would just come with that checklist when you're getting a permit? Like it would just be another item that would, so it isn't really becoming a burden for city staff, I think is just understanding how the implementation of this
Yeah.
would actually look for staff.
I mean, as of right now, the idea is that any accessory building should get a building permit anyways. So if they're putting in electricity or power or water, then they're going to have to get an inspection. So we're receiving those applications anyways. They're going through a checklist. They're submitting that to the building department. And so it would just be included with that. If they're putting it in the easement, they have to add those extra documents. Is it going to be a burden on the city staff? Yeah, we'll have to, it's one more thing that we're going to have to check for and verify. So, yes.
So I think another question is, how practical is it to build a shed that can be, that is not permanent and can be relocated within 24 hours, right? And then there's fees that begin. It just doesn't seem like people build sheds is portable. It's portable. Yeah, especially at, 200 square feet or, 20 by 10.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of these are built on skids. You get a big tractor, you have one, you could push it real easy. So, who has a tractor who can do that in 24 hours? I don't know, but hypothetically, if you had the right stuff, it could be moved. Our concern is if there's, let's say there's a sewer line and that breaks and we got to get to it and it's emergency and someone put their big fancy shed on top of it. I mean, 24 hours is a lot of time to have a broken sewer line.
Yeah.
So our concern is if there's a utility in that easement, and the way that this is written, we may not even allow them to put it there. We might say, you know what, that line is too important to have a structure built there. We're not going to give you permission to build there. So we have to sign off on it, as well as the other utility companies that might have a line in that easement.
So a question for Hiram then is, Hiram, is this language defensible enough that allows us that discretion to say that easement is okay, but this one is not to build over? I think you might be muted.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you've got, as Austin said, the how this ordinance is drafted as it is, it's already, the ordinance that we have in place is more restrictive than what we see generally all over the place. But in this, I know there's going to be some, you've got your, you've got your code enforcer going out there saying, is this going to be movable? Is this not going to be movable within 24 hours? I think it's hard to say in terms of having a tight, language on this statute in terms of if the movable requirement is really important to the council, it's hard to get really definite. I don't see it in a lot of cities where they actually have defined what's movable within 24 hours and what's not movable in 24 hours. But I think it is enforceable. I mean, a lot of things you're going to be looking at is whether it is permanently attached to the ground. This just says, right, the building shall not require permanent attachment to the ground. It doesn't prohibit it expressly as I read it currently. Did that answer your question, Mayor?
Well, partially, I guess part of it is the discretion of the city to say that you're okay to build over this easement, but not that easement. Not necessarily the mobility of the structure,
Okay.
but the nature of the easement.
Well, under this, right, it basically, how this code is drafted, if they provide us with documentation, right, sufficient documentation saying, and right, we've seen this in many different cities. We have example forms ourselves of the documentation, as long as they can produce documentation from whoever owns these easements, right, Rocky Mountain Power, whoever it might be, saying that we have no issue
Okay.
with this. I think that that's sufficient. Now I understand some of the comments that have been made, right? Is that really the city's responsibility to be the one verifying whether these easements are okay or not? But at least the city, in my view, and the language at least, is protecting those easement holders' rights, where we say we need some sort of consent from the easement holder in the first place. And I think documentation, like I said, I've seen it, like Murray City has a program where they do it. South Jordan City, they do it as well, where they have these forms either produced by the city, or they just require the documentation come directly from the easement holder themselves.
Yeah, that's an interesting topic. Shane sent out, I think, a section of state code that kind of talks about utility easements. So I wonder if what is really pertinent here is city easements. So that would be city water lines, sewer, storm drains, and trail easements and so on. Is that what we need to focus on, is protecting the city's easements versus the utilities, which have their own processes and
Yeah,
it's granted.
if they're our own easements, right, then we would be the ones that they would have to receive documentation from, as I read the statute, right? So unless the city is willing to grant the easement holder, grant the property owner access to that easement, they wouldn't be able to. If, for example, if it's a public utility easement owned by the city itself, for whatever water, sewer, what might be there, they would have to receive approval from the city itself. And maybe that's what you're pointing out, is, do we need further language in there that would give a criteria of when the city would allow people to build on top of city-owned easements, as opposed to privately held easement, public utility easements, or I guess they're like quasi-public utility easements of like Rocky Mountain Power and some of the other utility companies.
I just feel like the reason we came up with this, right, was we had some sheds on properties in Alpine that did not conform to our ordinances, and they still might not with our new ordinances. And you know what I mean? It could be over a city easement, and the city can decide that those structures still need to come down or to be moved, correct? Is there anything protecting these citizens that approached in the first place?
Protecting them?
Yeah, well, I feel like the whole reason we even went down this rabbit hole, because I said, you know what, I feel like our ordinances are fine, just like what Planning Commission said. I was in support of them. But, Jason, being the soft-hearted person that he is, wanted to make sure that these people can keep their sheds that they had built and built on their properties. So my concern is, we're going through this and spent an awful lot of time and resources. And are we still going to get to the same point where these people are going to have to move their sheds or alter it to still conform?
Well, I'm certain that Shane or Austin could probably address what type of easements we're generally dealing with. My understanding is, especially in any sort of newer development, automatically you're going to have, surrounding the entire property, you're going to have a public utilities or utility easement surrounding them, right? So every lot is going to have that. Now, generally those under the code, any sort of utility can basically tap into the same utility easement. So Comcast, Rocky Mountain Power, they can all use that easement, but whoever owns the easement, they're the ones that have to relinquish it. So what I'm getting at is, every single new subdivision, at least, and newer subdivisions are going to be surrounded. The lot's going to be surrounded by public utility easements. I think the policy that I understood from the last time was, last council meeting was, do we really want to restrict everybody's lot automatically from building a shed on top of that automatic public utility easement surrounding the lot itself? That's not, obviously, that's not up to me. It's a council decision, but that was my understanding
And
from the discussion.
council, we do have a gentleman in the audience who'd like to come forward, and if you could please just state your name and address with the microphone. And then that's just for as a matter of public record.
Ron Robinson, 22 South Viperhorn Drive in Alpine. And I think the nuance that Austin put in here with the when utilities are present. And so when I've talked a couple of times to Utah Power and Light and to Questar, and whenever they have conduits and lines and pipes, that's when they get really protective and they don't want you to do anything on top of that. So that's what I'm assuming, when he says when utilities are present in the easement, then it needs to be temporary. Because they're probably never going to give you the rights to build anything on there. I think that if it's just dirt below and then the city signs off on it and utility companies sign off saying it's just sort of a wraparound, there's nothing planned in the future, it's just dirt below us, that's when it can be a permanent structure. That's my understanding. And this utility, some of the language I read this couple weeks ago is when they say that conduits, lines, pipes, that's anything that's directly below, that's when they don't want you to have anything permanent. I think that's what you said.
Yeah, you're exactly right. That's the way that this is drafted with the intent, what you're saying. So
if the city and the utility companies if somebody asked them to let them use this area to build a structure, their attitude is if it's just dirt and we have no future plans for that, then they relinquish those rights and they let you do that. And this is just saying if you have active pipes and utilities, maybe you want to add some language in there, just for example, pipes, utilities, conduits, then it needs to be temporary. And that's just letting people know that this is an active.
Or why not just prohibit completely if it's an active easement and allow flexibility if it's a vacated easement? So if it's active, it immediately, it isn't allowed. It's an active easement.
Yeah, so and just speaking from sample size one, but my experience is if it's active, they really don't want to do that. They won't give you the release. And if they're going to, then they're gonna have to get their engineer and their city planner. So if they do have anything active, it becomes a very big deal. And they gave me one example of Daybreak and how they wanted to have within an active, nothing over pipes, but they actually had to go to great lengths for the builder to be able to just have window wells within the easement, just because they want some buffer zone. So whenever they have active pipes, they're not gonna let you put anything over it. But if it's within their zone of something, then it's a big project and they're gonna be very particular if there's active stuff. So I think that's what he's just saying is we're just not gonna have anybody put something permanent over something active. But if you get the utility company in the city to say, yes, we sort of vacated, we let you do this, it's just dirt below them, they don't have any plans and they're okay with permanent structures. That's just my experience.
yeah, and to add on what he's saying. So if you look at item 5, the first part of that, it's saying that they have to sign off on it. So we're not going to know if Rocky Mountain Power or the gas company has a line through there. That's why we're going to put the burden on the homeowner to go to them, get the letter saying yes or no, there is not anything there, and they give me permission to build there. Once they have that letter, then we say, okay, do we have any city stuff in there? Yes or no? Do we care? And then we sign off on it, hypothetically. So that's the first part comes first, and then those 2 sub bullet points come if there is an easement. But let's say there is something, an active item in the easement, but they're still allowing them to build on it, then the city might still allow them to build there. But it's a more onerous process on the homeowner and the utility company if that's the case.
So I had one other suggestion that we leave the kind of an option for the existing standard as available. So no setback with it, with a 10-foot height maximum, since there are already hundreds of those in the city. And if someone has a 8-foot shed or a 6-foot shed or something, they could put it next to their fence, subject to all these other points, and not feel like they, and not have to go off 2 feet in that circumstance.
So just, let's use that as an example. Let's say you have something that's 10 feet high and you want to put it right on your property line. Is there, I haven't read where there might be a limit to the size of that building and as,
It's still the 200 square foot down here.
okay, still it's 200 square feet, okay.
It's still,
But you're essentially, you could have a 20-foot auxiliary fence. You know, I mean, if you're right on the fence line anyway, and you're 10 feet high, you've got a 6-foot fence, but now you've extended to 10 feet for a 20-foot length, right? Does that make sense?
Mhm.
But don't we already have that? They can do it if they meet, and we have a list of
Yeah.
requirements they have to meet, and if they meet that, then they can have that flexibility.
Yeah.
So I think that already exists.
Right, that's how it's
Okay.
been, and of course,
Okay.
it can't drain onto another lot,
Mhm.
and so
Right.
on, non-combustive material. So Mayor, I'll make a motion if you
Okay,
think
please.
we're ready. I move to approve ordinance 2021-06 as proposed, with the addition of a new 9 or IX that would read, no minimum rear or side setback shall be required if the building will not be taller than 10 feet to the top of the roof line. Yeah, no minimum rear or side setback shall be required if the building will not be taller than 10 feet to the top of the roof line.
Okay, we have a motion by Greg Gordon. Do we have a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, second by Lon Lot. Discussion on the motion. Questions, Jessica?
So is that addressing the easement concerns too, or are you just removing the easement concerns completely?
No, well, it should include all of the other points. So up
Okay.
above, it says, required when all of the following conditions are met. That's part of D.
Okay.
So this is effectively an exception, an additional exception to the above, but I don't think it excludes any of the other.
Okay.
And unless,
So you'd still have to meet items 1 through 8, right?
right. And I don't know, is that better to state that explicitly, do you think, or I wasn't sure if that would be needed there.
I think it's implied.
I think it's implied. I don't think we need to
Okay.
call it out.
Mayor,
Yes.
I was trying to be polite that time, not cutting one off, but I ended up not being able to talk at all. So can I just ask a couple of questions?
Yes.
Last one, we never even discussed number 8 there before the motion. City council may grant additional exceptions to the above conditions if the necessary buildings located adjacent to a non-residential property. Is that good enough just to say that? Is that pretty standard to what we say on other exceptions?
The general exception clause in the subdivision ordinance specifies planning or engineering reasons, I believe, or something very close to that. I can look it up.
But these aren't planning or engineering issues, all right?
And that section is not applicable to this.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like, for example, a cul-de-sac being 470 feet instead of 450. There's an instance where a cul-de-sac crossed Dry Creek over by Creekside Park, and this is before Creekside Park, but because of that distance of crossing the creek, they ended up, the planning commission and council ended up giving an exception for a little bit longer cul-de-sac because of that thing that they're dealing with crossing the creek. So
that I understand that then, if any shed or accessory building butts up to non-residential property, commercial, that even on one side of it, then an exception can be given, even if they're close to a resident. I mean, if it's a square property and the back is backing up to commercial, but both sides are residential, with that, and it's over there in the corner, 2 feet off the property line, both in back and side, would that still come to the city council? Meaning anything that butts up to non-residential can be granted an exception by the city council.
yes.
I think the idea is that it would come to because there's so many different variables out there. There's so many different possible lot configurations and where you could place your shed on any given lot. The idea is that it goes to city council so they can look at it on a case-by-case basis and make a determination. So if I have a lot and I put my shed right in the middle of that lot, it's a square shaped lot, and I put the shed right in the middle, and let's say the back right behind me is a school, and I'm 30 or 40 feet away from my 2 side neighbors, that's probably going to be more likely to be getting an exception than if I put it right in the corner of that same lot. So
it's still up to the city council at that point to decide to give exception. It could be right to the back of the property line and 1 foot off of the residential to the side, but the city council would still have the ability to grant an exception according to this ordinance, right?
correct.
Another question, who on the city council is the one who approves the encroachment, for sewer water? Who is
Or
it?
the city council?
No, sorry, city, Alpine City does that. Someone gets a sign off from
City
the,
engineer?
is it Shane?
We could specify who would do that. Typically, these situations would come to our staff meeting we have on Monday mornings, where Austin, myself, and Jed. Sorry, I turned that off. Where Austin, myself, and Jed would be there at our Monday morning staff meeting. But many other sections in our ordinance, it specifies who has that authority. A lot of them would be the city engineer.
So we put that into this here. Should we put that into this, or do we just leave it as it is there?
It's already been established, but is it something we need to note?
In this case, I think it probably should be the planner. But he could ask.
I mean, we like to bounce ideas. So even on the ones where it is the engineer, Jed will usually come in and talk. We'll all put our brains together and talk about it. So that's pretty typical, even when it is Jed's call.
We like to spread the blame. I think on the general exception criteria for subdivisions, it specifies that the engineer makes a recommendation to the planning commission. The planning commission makes a recommendation, and then the city council has the final say.
It starts with the engineer.
Yeah.
That's what I assumed that it would continue to do.
Where in this case, it's more of a planning issue. I think it would be more appropriate to have Austin or the city planner as that person.
And I'm just wondering if the utilities outside of the city approve of it, do you see a logical reason why Alpine City would not approve it after?
If it met all those other criteria, right?
I mean, I'm just wondering if there's a way that the city could just be a blocker to this, where other utilities are fine with it, and even though we have this in ordinance, we can't. I mean, is there? I don't know what's the word? Are there? I don't know. checklist of things that have to be done, and if so, then it'll be approved.
I like Jason's train of thought. If
Thanks.
it's, sorry, Jason, were you finished?
I couldn't get it out, so thank you for getting my train of thought.
I'm sorry to interrupt you,
No,
Shane.
it's fine.
Austin, could you do me a favor? I think all of us would benefit from this. This upper left quadrant of our screen is just a city logo. Is there any way we could flip that to become whoever is joining the meeting online, like Jason and Carla? I just can't see them. And so I
Yeah.
usually kind of rely on
So-
seeing them to know when they want to speak.
The company that we hired to work on this, they're working on some new options that we can hopefully improve what's shown on the screen at one time.
Okay,
Right now, it's a trade-off. We either we show the document and that's a priority, or the council is a priority, but really, whoever's talking online is probably not going to be taking up much of your screen as
No,
under the
right. I
current
mean, I can
configuration.
barely see Jason, so I couldn't tell before when he wanted to say something and he couldn't because he didn't want to
Yeah,
interrupt.
I can put on, let me try this and see if this is kind of what you're thinking.
Just if we could have the people, especially our council members and staff that are participating in the meeting, be more visible, that helps.
Maybe
Sorry.
just take the packet information away from.
Yeah, I'll just take the packet information away for now, and then let's do this other.
Oh, and I'm
change
sorry
here.
to interrupt you, Shane. I was just kind of making me feel handicapped that I couldn't really read the.
No, it's fine. I was just gonna say, Jason, I think brings up some good points here. The exception clause as written is very general. So you might get an exception of somebody saying, hey, my shed is 203 square feet instead of 200. So I think I like the idea of having maybe some criteria, like exceptions could be granted for setbacks, just setbacks alone, or if there's something else that's part of that you would want to potentially. Is that where you were going, Jason?
Exactly.
But I think it's important. Oh, sorry, Jason.
Maybe we allow a little bit higher in a situation where it butts up against a commercial building where it's not next to neighbors. And that could be an exception option for the city council as well.
Yeah.
I just don't want to create the slippery slope where, well, we did this last time and this is just a little bit beyond. And before you know it, we're way outside the boundaries that we've established and the exception is the rule rather than.
Willow Canyon.
I can neither confirm or deny. That's what I was thinking of.
So it's either wide open or try to hit those items that you might be willing to consider for an exception. And I think I would err on maybe trying to create a list and maybe at some point in the future, you need to add or take something away from that.
And I would say a list of percentages that could be deviated by exception as opposed to just to have an open game.
Okay,
But
so
that would have to be part of the motion in order for us to pick that up. So I don't know if you're willing to make that part of the motion or if you just want to let it stand as it is.
Yeah.
An exception criteria list.
Yeah, and so Jason, if I think what you were talking about setbacks and height is the two criteria when it's adjacent to open space.
yeah, there's a couple of other things that maybe I can ask before. I got a couple more things maybe after that. Can I just walk to make sure I understand this, Shane or Austin? So if someone gets the documentation for the encroachment from, or someone doesn't get the documentation for encroachment from the utilities, are they still able to put up a temporary shed on that easement that could be moved within 24 hours? A small metal shed, for example.
No, not on an easement.
But I think historically, that's always been the case, right? That's what we're saying, is that's always been the case and there was no way to even do it at all, right? That's where it's been.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, what we're creating, we're adding more stipulations. It's gonna be a more burdensome process. It's gonna add more criteria that they have to adhere to. Our current ordinance is simple, straightforward, and in many ways less restrictive.
Except for they interpret what they're going to do on their own. Simply put, is when one thinks that they're putting in a shed that's under 200 square foot, they haven't come in for any kind of permission. They just assume that they can do whatever they choose to do with that shed.
Yes, they've assumed that incorrectly, but yes.
And they anticipate that they don't have to get any kind of building permit. This particularly states that every building needs a permit. Now, whether it costs anything or not, if it meets the criteria we're talking about, then it's just like everyone's done in the past. They just go ahead and put up the little shed under 200 square foot in the corner of their place, as outlined by the planner or the, whoever they talk with when they come in. I guess it would be Marla, when they come in to get that permit, right?
All right, but to Councilman Gordon's thing, one reason why this came up is because we actually did allow people to put temporary structures on easements on a case-by-case basis previous. And the case-by-case basis is kind of what made us rethink this. So we have allowed that before on a case-by-case basis. But this is going to make it so we no longer can allow it ever on a case-by-case basis. If you remember correctly, our first meeting we had when all the neighbors came, one of the neighbors brought up that they had talked with Austin and that they are allowed on a case-by-case basis. So that's my question. If that's still an option, if it's not, then it's not.
So when they, in the last meeting, when they referred to the case-by-case basis, what they were referring to were specifically city easements where we've granted on a case-by-case basis. So in a city easement where we have a utility going through there, we've allowed them on a case-by-case basis, depending on where the object is that they want to put in. Let's say it's a retaining wall, or let's say it's a fence. Depending on where that's going to be, it may or may not be an issue for that given easement. So that's not the same as a public utility easement. So city easements are different. And that was the only instance where we would do that in the past.
I thought all these easements were really city easements that we let the utilities on and have part of, but the city is the one who controls the easement, correct? I thought that's what Shane said. They're all the same.
Some input on that, but I think that gets into a little bit of a gray area. By that document that I send out from the state code, it's basically these easements are recorded to give those public utilities the opportunity to put their facilities in that fit them.
It sounded to me that the utilities basically own those easement rights
And I
themselves,
think
not the city. Yeah.
I think that would be accurate in the way my mind sees that as well. And then
Okay, so let me see if I understand this, Shane. You were on mute that time, but I heard you pretty well. Say that you get the encroachment documentation sign off. The encroachment documentation sign off. Then number 2 there, the owner acknowledges that there are all costs of moving the building, including damage to the property. At this point, they can build a permanent structure at that point, right? With number 2 there.
Sorry, Jason, was that number 2?
5.2, sorry.
5.2.
5.2. They would still have to follow number 1 as well, the way it's drafted.
No, number 1 says if the utilities are present, that takes a place. If there's no utilities actually present under the ground and they've got the encroachment documentation signed off, then they move to number 2, it looks like there.
I think number 2 applies in either circumstance, whether it's permanent or not.
I think in Roman numeral 5, the building will not be placed on land designated as a recorded easement, such as a utility or trail easement, unless the owners of said easement agrees to allow the encroachment. So I think that's a general statement for everything. And then there's these sub points down below.
And then the first subset goes specifically when utilities are present in the easement, the building shall not require permanent attachment, or the shall not require, but not be allowed permanent attachment to the ground and can be removed in thing. So that's saying when utilities are present, meaning, hey, I've got an easement there and right now there's a conduit underneath that easement for electrical or sewer or whatever. I assume that that is what happens when easements, when utilities are present. When utilities are not present is how I read the second one. When they're not present, the owner acknowledges they bear all the costs of moving the building. I don't see anywhere where it has to be temporary. Basically, at this point, the utilities have come in and say, we're never going to use this. We're turning it back over to the citizens. This is something that, you know, we all have on every subdivision. We take this property. We're never going to put a natural gas or electrical through here. At that point, it becomes, I was hoping this kind of came back to a process where the landowner then owns the ability to do what it wants within that easement. And that's how I read that one. Reading that wrong?
That's how, I think that's how I read it as well, is that if there isn't a utility in place and it's been vacated by the utility owner, then you could have a permanent structure, right? Because there's no utilities under there subject to 0.1, right? That's.
And I apologize to our Alpine City person there. We should have had her go first before this, but I don't know if we're all on the same page with that one is all what I'm saying, Gordon. Councilman Gordon.
We actually thought about that, but we committed last meeting to have this item first on the agenda. So
Because it was
we were stuck.
second last time, right?
On that note, when in item 1, shouldn't the word require be replaced with allowed, or shall not allow permanent attachment to the ground? Is that the right word verbiage to use there?
I think you're right.
Okay.
Maybe, or the building should not be permanently attached to the ground. I think
shall not be permanently would sound better.
yeah. Seems like it would accomplish what we're trying to do. Are you reading it differently?
I'm just wondering why it just doesn't immediately disqualify an easement if there's active utilities. Why are we talking about permanent or non-permanent structures over active utility easements?
That's the point, Jessica. There's not every easement around houses does not have active utilities in it.
Right, so if we just set the definition.
Yeah.
If it's an active utility easement,
It's a no.
structures are not allowed.
Well,
Then they can look to vacating their other unused easements and reclaiming use of that land how they want to. But how come, what I'm not sure about is why are we trying to put structures over active utility easements?
so maybe that's addressed through the requirement to in 5 to provide documentation that it's been released per, you know, the Ron Robinson's experience. They would allow it, you know, readily if it's not in use. If it's not, then there's maybe a separate type of allowance, or they wouldn't allow it. So I guess the utility would deny it, or perhaps make an exception of some sort.
So there are rare circumstances where they may allow it in an active easement. They may allow the construction of a building. And Mr. Robinson actually gave an example where he said, so you're telling me I could build a structure, pour a foundation, as long as I get this form signed from you guys, and that's okay. And they're like, yes, that's what we mean by you signing this form.
And even the state code, if you recall, said that that the utility is responsible for replacing any bushes and things like that, but the responsibility of replacement of a structure or buildings is that of the home, landowner.
Yeah, it was quite interesting, right? It talks about asphalt, grass,
Uh-huh.
concrete, gravel,
Over
shrubs.
an existing.
Is covered
utility.
by the utility, but structures would be covered by the homeowner, I believe.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I'd like to remind council that we have 1 hour left to finish the rest of our agenda. So if we have more discussion on this item, I don't want to cut it short, but we need to make sure it's poignant or pertinent and concise, and move to a vote on the motion. We do have a motion on the table that has been seconded. Greg, I'd like to give you an opportunity if you want to amend your motion at all.
Yeah, yeah. Jason, do we still have that concern that there's some ambiguity about when a permanent structure could go in, per your earlier comments?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but if they're not on an easement, they can stick in a 200 square foot and put it on, attach it to the ground. Right? What we're saying here is, could they do the same thing if the easement has been vacated?
Right.
I was reading it that you could, but this is the ambiguity that we went into, because
Yeah, I mean, I think that's how I read it. Does anyone, I mean, Shane, is that how you understand it as well?
I understand how you're reading it. I think I agree.
that what? How
That
I
it's,
or how Greg was saying it?
but yeah, if they have agreed to allow a building to go in that easement, that it can be on a permanent foundation.
Okay, let me ask one more question then. Say you have an easement, you vacated the easement, you put it on a permanent foundation there that's less than, whatever it is. Could you put utilities, could you put electricity to it if the easement's been vacated? It's now sitting on top of that utility easement that's been vacated.
See, I think that language was removed from this version this week, but what was added was require a building permit, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think.
Correct.
that's-
So yes, they would require a building permit, and yes, they could have electricity, but they have to get a building permit.
Does it say that, or does it need to say that in this accessory buildings or not?
It does say that up above. If you scroll up right after it says accessory buildings, it says all accessory buildings require a building permit and shall be located in accordance with the following.
All accessory buildings.
Okay, so
Line or number 2, accessory buildings.
got it. So in 5.2, we don't need to put anything there that it could be permanent. It's just enough as it says right there that.
We're just rereading it, Jason.
Okay, let's just keep it tight and then move on.
My personal opinion is it's fine the way it is, that you would be allowed, if the utilities signed off on a building going in there, that it could go in permanent as written in the packet.
Okay, those are my,
I'd agree with that.
other than saying that I would be in favor of lesser than 2 foot setback. 1 foot max is my opinion on that, but that's all I have. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Jason. We have a couple of questions from Lon.
Yeah, so Austin, I just had questions on each one of these sections, section 1, section 2. Does that correlate with zones?
Correct, yeah. So each one of those that you're seeing is based on the zone. So you're
So
gonna
they
see.
all apply exactly the same. in
Correct,
every
that's the
zone.
way, and that's the way it is right now.
Okay, and then one, I guess that was it then.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions on the motion? Bonnie, would you mind reading back the motion? Okay, Greg, can you help with that?
After 10 feet.
Oh, yeah. Will not be taller than 10 feet to the top of the roof line. And, yeah.
Okay,
And that just, tries to copy the existing and language as closely as possible.
So Greg, so you're saying that if it's not taller than 10 feet, they can build right, because you're saying no setbacks, they can build right on the property line.
Yes.
Yeah, essentially, that's the same as it has been and is today.
Well, I thought we did the 2 feet setback for the runoff and whatnot.
I think the runoff still applies per the subpoint 3 there. So it still can't have runoff. If they can manage to put it on the edge and not have runoff, then that's how it's been, I suppose.
So the structure itself couldn't be on the property line. The roof line could end at the property line, correct?
No, he's saying 0 setbacks. The
You-
setbacks were never set by a roof line. It's by
In
the.
theory,
foundation.
you could change the shape of your roof and have it drain to the inside of your, so the
Yeah.
back, this is the back of the property line, and you could have it drain onto your property, or you could put a rain gutter on the back and collect it that way too.
But you would still, if your building is pressed up on the property line, that rain gutter is gonna hang into
Hang
the
over,
neighbor's property.
cannot go beyond property.
But-
Unless it's like a zero-e, like the little lawnmower shed you see at Home Depot, a lot of,
Yeah,
a lot
or a
of those are-
lean-to style where it all slopes forward.
But according to the way Greg's saying it here, it is the way it's been for years now, same way.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's hundreds of those in the city.
Now I don't wanna move my shed. Okay,
But-
yes, please.
Greg Gordon moved to approve
Could-
ordinance 2021-6
She might
as
have-
proposed with the addition
Sorry, please start over.
Greg Gordon moved to approve ordinance 2021-06 as proposed with the addition to 2D.10 or 9, sorry, that would read no minimum rear or side setbacks will not be taller than 10 feet to the roof line and lawn lot. Second motion. Is that right?
Yeah, let me just read that one more time in
Okay.
case. No minimum rear or side setback shall be
Shall
required.
be required.
Yeah, if the building will not be taller than 10 feet to the top of the roof line. That's probably exactly how it
Okay.
read, 2 months ago, or, yeah.
And Greg,
Clear on the motion?
your motion then would, if someone right now in that subdivision, for example, that came in, if they had a shed built at a 1 foot setback, they would be required to tear it down, but someone on the 2 foot wouldn't, right?
Well, yeah, so, I mean, yeah, in some of those cases, I don't, supposedly, supposedly it's based on complaints today, so there could be many of these throughout the city, but there isn't really an active complaint from a neighbor, potentially. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know the exact measurements on that, on some of those.
One of the individuals came in was 2 feet, one was 1 feet, but I'm just saying, those are the individuals we talked with before, I'm sure there's more, so if 2 feet is that important, versus 1 feet, it is what it is, but if it's not, that's my only question.
Well, again, I felt like the 2 foot is a little bit of a compromise as we're going higher with the building, a couple feet higher, that we pushed it off the property line just a little bit more versus the 10 foot right up to the property line. We pushed it up 2.5 feet. We pushed it over 2 feet. Push it away from the property line. That was my thinking on it.
Okay, I'd like to put it to a vote. Unless there's anything pressing that anybody would like to talk about.
Was the wording going to change from shall not require permanent
thank you.
attachment to shall not have permanent attachment? Or what was
Yeah.
going to
thank you
offer
for
some
bringing us
clarity
back.
in that?
So that was section
That-
4.
1, 5, 1, V1, I think.
Yeah.
Yep, 5V1.
I think the way the mayor said it was, it shall not be permanently attached to the ground. I
Okay.
think
Yeah,
Okay,
that
that would
simplifies
be a
it.
better, clear way to say it.
yeah,
I'll modify my motion accordingly.
Okay,
Do you have that, Bonnie?
so section 4,
Section 5,
Four.
it's Roman numeral 5,
Roman numeral 5.
5 dot, and then
5 dot.
line 1
Line
under
1.
that. Says when utilities are
it's right
present
there
in
where
an
it
easement,
says
the building shall not
Shall not
require,
be required, you want me to cross out required? right?
leave require, shall not be permanently attached to the ground.
so
So
delete
scratch
require.
Require and put B,
Be, and then permanently
permanently.
Shall not
Atta-
be
attached.
permanently.
to the ground. So we're amending those 3 words.
Okay.
Is that,
Got it.
is that the way you
Yeah.
understood it?
Correct, yeah.
Thank you.
I don't know if there's a second on that, but
Oh,
I
Lon, are
second-
you okay?
yes,
with
I'm
that?
good with that.
Okay, thank you. All right, we will vote on the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
I,
Any opposed?
I,
Aye.
Okay, the motion does pass by a margin of 3-2. And we will move on. Okay, Shane, did you want to talk about the Alpine Days?
Yeah. Yes, so, so we're in March. You know, we'll be working on our budget between now and the first meeting in June. But the money that will be spent for the Alpine Days 2021 event will be in the next budget year. So I felt like while we're trying to get things rolling here, it would be beneficial to discuss budget and basically the council would be committing to some budget that they will later adopt. One of the first questions that Cammie asked me is, what's my budget? And I'm like, we gotta bring that to council and get their input and thoughts because we're asking for this kind of in advance. So what we traditionally do is prepay. So if we had expenses today, we prepay them into the next budget year. So they just go into an account. And then once the new budget opens up July 1st, then those expenses are just spread into the appropriate categories. In this case, it's really just rodeo and Alpine Days. So I dug back in the files a little bit, and back in 2017, the council kind of made a shift on how the budget was looked at. Prior to this, there was just kind of some money thrown in the budget for revenue and expenses, and then if it went over that, it was just kind of loose, and Lon was involved with this with me, but at the end of the year, there'd be an adjustment made. So it was just kind of an uncomfortable situation because what would happen is the Alpine Days chairperson would come to me and say, hey, I want to do this. Is it okay? And we only have 2 city council meetings a month. And so I was having to stick my neck out and say, yeah, I guess, and then hoping that the council would support that decision in the end. So what we did was budgeted $134,450 for expenses, and it was about $70,000 in revenue. So we knew that this event could cost the city around $55,000 or something like that. I also have provided some past years' actual revenues, what was budgeted for revenue and expenses, and then what the actuals were for that year. And then in the far right-hand column, what our actual cost was. There was a question in 2019 of why things are so different. We had less revenue and more expenses. We had a new person. I don't think I know the advertising that we met like every 2 weeks. Is this being done? Yes. This being done? Yes. But in the end, it was not being done. So word was not getting out where it should have. On the, what do we call the dinner?
Senior.
The,
dinner.
senior dinner?
not the senior
Oh.
one,
Oh, yeah,
the family dinner,
dinner.
the family dinner.
On Monday
Yeah.
night.
So, you know, we have to commit in advance of 800 meals or whatever it is. Well, if you only have 400 people buy tickets, then you're stuck still paying for 800. And that's one of the things that happened in this case. And there were, without going into the details of everyone, there were just multiple things like that that happened. And that is one of the reasons here. I think there was some misunderstandings on the budget and what could be spent. And so I appreciate Cammie just wanting to be upfront and ask what her parameters are for this. And while we were doing this, we thought we might as well bring the rodeo guys in as well. And they're first have been asking me, are we going to be able to have the rodeo? Because they need to get some things lined up as well with the stock contractor
Yes.
and different things. So
Yes, we are.
anyway, so really what we're asking the council to do tonight is to just commit to a budget number that will be eventually adopted in the FY 2022 budget in a few months. And then this kind of will expand a little bit and, you know, will the event look like it has in the past? Will we cut something out? That could affect budget. My guess is not up, but probably down. And I know Cammie will start looking at that. What I talked with the mayor and I discussed was maybe if Cammie had a couple of weeks to kind of look at the events that have happened in the past, look at what changes she thinks should be made, maybe present them back to us, and then kind of approve a framework for her to move forward on.
And Cam, and when Cammie and I spoke, and I know you've expressed this before, Cammie had talked about really localizing the event and making sure that it's a good hometown. I think you mentioned a theme that I'll let you talk about that I think would sounded really good to me, to kind of bring it into an Alpine centered event. Not that it hasn't been in the past, but I think, well, I think a lot of people have expressed that they'd like to see it return back to the good old fashioned hometown kind of celebration. And maybe not go as far as we have on some of the events, to bring in talent from way outside our immediate area, and to maybe just make it more of a home production. And I'm sure council will have some comments to that effect as well. So sorry, Shane, go ahead.
Yeah, and then
Shane, are you saying that maybe we get like more of a plan before we get a budget, like I'm coming up with a plan?
I think essentially we want to get you enough information that you feel comfortable starting to line things up.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to present what we've had in the past and see if the council wants to make a major shift away from that, or if it would be something similar, or if there'd be a 10 or 20% reduction or something like that, to give you some framework to come back and say, these are the events that I think we can do with those budget parameters. Kind of get that approved and move forward.
And we should keep in mind that we didn't have Alpine Days last year. So we, in theory, we have extra money. And I'm not saying we should spend it all, but I think we're in a position that this is kind of our year back. And we could spend a little bit of extra money on hometown events that would really benefit the community and make it a richer experience for the people here in Alpine, because we missed it last year. And it will be kind of our re-entry into socializing as a community again. And by that, what I mean is maybe the senior dinner, we go a little bit above and beyond what we've ever done before for the seniors.
Yeah.
You know, I think the seniors, for example, missed out on more than a lot of us did because they were confined. And so I think it'd be a good idea to just
make sure we're being generous with the budget to create events that are really meaningful.
And if you look at the budget, or the financial report, it does reflect that. For Alpine Days falls under Parks and Recreation. Right now, we're 37.7% expended, and we're 67% through the budget year. So it does reflect that we didn't have Alpine Days. So,
And I also have everything spent for the last 2 years, which you want me to.
yeah, and is that the Google Doc?
Well, this is,
Sorry, are you comfortable coming on up, Cammie, so we can have you recorded?
just like everything that was spent both years, itemized for 2018 and 2019. But I guess before we, like, if you guys are talking as a city council about spending, the same, are we wanting it the same? I mean, there's definitely different ways to go about this. I've helped with Linden Days. We had Roundup and Alpine Days in the last 20 years. I've been on a committee almost every year for 20 years. And there's definite ways, you know what I mean? Like, you have Strawberry Days that does a full blown carnival every night. You have Midway Swiss Days, which they want outside people. It's a city fundraiser. You have Linden Days in Lehigh, which they get volunteers, and so their budget's a lot lower. So it's kind of how the city council wants this to be done. And that would affect the budget greatly because, and I do, like, already from the messages I've gotten in the last 2 days, like, people are coming, like,
They're ready.
they're wanting this. But like you mentioned, it might be a smaller budget, we might have to scale back, maybe crowd wise, but I think that would make it almost more expensive, not to, like, or it's like I'm asking for more money, but crowd, if we're having to spread things out or go over multiple days or multiple hours, it could end up making things even cost more, but then we can cut other things, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I know that in our other one, we got a lot of these things I'm looking at on here, donated or volunteer. Like, for example, the golf cart. I'm like, did we ever reach out to Alpine Country Club and just like that can be their donation, like letting us use the golf cart for a week, or we always just paid? Do you know what I mean? Like, because Linden Days,
I think we bought
the
our own at
local
one point.
Tri-City golf course, it was Tri-City back in the day, used to donate for the week.
Yeah.
And we'd run the sign for 'em. So, there's a lot to be considered here, but I guess more wanting what you want, and then whatever the budget is, we can stick with the budget.
Yeah, and in my mind, being creative is awesome, and we haven't micromanaged the Alpine Days chairperson in the past, but if you could get that donated, that'd be great. There have been a lot of things that have been donated.
We did have a golf cart incident a couple of years
We
ago.
did.
Wasn't
good.
Yeah.
But I mean, besides just the budget, I mean, is there more direction from the city council?
Let's open it up to maybe a few council members. Greg, start with you.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think budget wise, I think this is a high value activity. If we can fit it in the budget, and it seems like we can, I think that's fine. My bigger concern is just sort of the allocation in some ways, right? I think part of the concern has been some of these big events where it feels like it's not Alpine, really, the people and the feel of it. So there is some of that, like the fish grab, right? I think last year, I think it finished in 15, 20 minutes, maybe I'm wrong, but, and so you could look at some of those things, right? Maybe try to promote the carnival more on Friday when it's kind of empty. I don't know if we need the stage or the concert necessarily. It's a big cost factor. I don't know, right? But, or some of those events, I don't know, but you look at what people really like. I think they tend to be those smaller events generally, and some of them. And
Like you're talking bang for your buck, whether or not this is community enriching for the money spent.
Yeah, and I think I mean I went to there was like a quilt event a couple of years ago, and it had a great sense of community. Clearly didn't cost anything, right? And that was a good one. you know, but it's fine to spend money. What's surprising though is that the city makes a significant investment, because if you go to some of these things, you pay quite a bit, right? For the race, you know, the competitions, the carnival, the vendors, right? You end up spending a lot of money. It doesn't, when you buy your t-shirt, it doesn't feel like it's a highly subsidized event oftentimes. And then you go to these things and you're like, I swear 2/3 of these people cannot live here. So anyway.
I agree, and maybe we, you know, maybe even rodeo tickets or carnival tickets are discounted for Alpine residents. Maybe it's,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So you feel that maybe the wristbands are $15 with an Alpine resident ID, if they're $9. You know, maybe we do some things like that to make it feel like it's promoted more for residents, or grandma who lives here can buy them, or I don't.
No, I think it makes a lot of sense to make it more affordable for the people who live here.
Yeah.
And, you know, people want to come from outside, that's great. We're not gonna tell people they can't come, but we want the priority to be very clear. It's Alpine people to celebrate together. It's our annual party.
I agree.
Yeah.
So
Jessica.
and just looking at the numbers, you know, it was about a $55,000 cost to the city. Is that the parameter that we're comfortable staying in? You know, I think you have to look at like, what's our end goal, you know, again, and then work backwards. Are we trying to make all the money back? Are we trying to be at zero cost, or where are we at in absorbing or subsidizing
Yeah.
Alpine days? What's our comfort level? And then we can create events around that. But I also second that. I think it needs to have a hometown feel. It needs to be first appealing to the community. And then if there's some other things that we want to add on and layer onto that might attract outside of the community, that's fine. But if we spend all of our budget on everything the community wants, maybe we don't need to add anything to attract.
I think we know that every year we're going to spend, I won't call it lose money on the event, but we're going to spend money on the event. We're going to bring some revenue back. But as long as we can end up in this margin of, you know, $25,000 to $55,000 of total expense to the city after all is said and done, that we've been comfortable with that in the past. And I think that's a moving target, because things are more expensive today than they were 2 years ago. They're a lot more expensive in some cases. So we have to account for all of that inflation. And
But if you look again, like at the big stage and the big concert and all of that, maybe the dollars would be better spent in creating the more of a hometown local races, bike, you know, events, hikes, all of those things that I don't think would have as much of a price tag on them.
We also might want to look at the number of events. Some cities go Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and this is Sunday to Sunday almost.
Yeah.
So we could maybe have it be Thursday, Friday, Saturday situation, and not, you know, have it be starting with the fireside and then this and then this.
yeah.
You could, I mean, are people here the whole week with their, you know?
Well, I think sometimes,
They got work those days, I don't know.
yeah, I mean, you look at the senior dinner, for example, those people are always here. So it's nice to be able to have that in the middle of the week or toward the beginning of the week, because we know they're here and it really doesn't involve anybody from outside the community. So that's a nice, I think that's part of having it through the week, is then we kind of reach this crescendo at the end of the year or the end of the week, where a lot is happening on the final 2 days. But just, you know, events here and there, like the family dinner on Monday night. I think that's a really nice opportunity for people in Alpine to come out, and perfect example of, you know, we have food trucks come in. So those meal tickets to an Alpine resident, if you can produce an Alpine driver's license, you know, maybe it's $8 and to everybody else it's $12. Which encourages local community involvement. And
Even if you don't live here, grandma lives here, and you're camping safe grandma, but she can go up and buy it with it. You know what I mean? Like, you're not just from nowhere, you heard about.
Well, and during the week, like the 3-versus-3 sports activities, it's summer, the kids are wanting to do things, go to the pickleball tournament, I think. I don't know, I don't know if I'd want to shorten the time. It feels like it does build to this event, but I don't know, again, balancing the cost of that. What does it cost to run a pickleball tournament? What does it cost to run soccer tournament? What does it cost to run a 3-on-3 basketball tournament?
I like focusing on those events too, that bring people together, that are community involvement events, you know, the family dinner. You mentioned the concerts, I think, and I don't know if it was the concert that was the draw, what the draw was, but a couple of years ago when we had literally the entire park covered with canopies and coolers, and I mean, that was like the best community social day I can remember. And that's, you know, something that creates that kind of environment where everybody wants to just come out, bring their lunch and hang out with each other. And then I look at the car show as another one where people just kind of calmly interact and they look at cars, but they're talking to each other and visiting. That to me is a community centered event. And I know outsiders will come to that, which is great again, but it definitely pulls the community out.
As I was looking at this too, our biggest costs are things we don't charge for. The concert, the fireworks, the car show, some of our giant chunks are not anything we can recoup.
Yeah. And the car show is run by, I forgot his name.
Waters.
Steve Waters.
Yeah.
I mean, it has been in the past. I don't know. So
He has already called.
Yeah,
I think good. He's done a really good job.
we need to get you his contact info.
Lon, did you want to offer anything?
Well, I know that some of those big events we don't charge for, but they're a big draw for the citizens. The concert in the park, that was, but that doesn't mean that you move forward that way. I do like the best practices approach and look at some of these things that a lot of people wanted year after year. Of course, a parade, they love a parade. That's one of the things I remember though, is coming into Alpine, the primary, the wards in the primary did the parade, kids on their bikes and things like that. It has become very commercialized, but still a parade is a fun thing. And the focus I had when we started on this and the budget aspect of things, it was very difficult to run an Alpine Days without knowing what you had to work with. And some of the times those who ran it did make it work and broke even type of a thing. And they were very proud of that. And that was a good thing. But the way the community has grown and what it is right now, I don't know that we will ever be able to break even on if we're not charging for like fireworks. If we're going to have fireworks and it's a large sum, there's no way you can break even by charging so much at the other events. And so as I've looked at it, I'm very willing to bring a sense of community by setting a budget and saying, okay, here's what we can work with. And if you bring in revenues that offset some of that, that's great to me. And as I looked at that for years and years in the past, they really had hidden costs. The city was compensating for this or compensating for that, compensating for this, and you total all that up and say, here's what it actually cost us. And so I'm saying, let's figure out what we're willing to lay down there and say, this is the event. And then if you bring in revenues to offset it, then great.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you. Carla, did you have anything you wanted to bring up?
No, I like the idea of coming, with kind of like a preliminary plan and a preliminary budget. I appreciated Greg Gordon's pie chart breakout of the expenses. For me, that was just really easy to see at a glance and understand. But just looking at the numbers at a quick glance, it looks like you're going to have to change the budgeted expenditures for the rodeo because it seems like the actual expenditures are going up each year. So you probably want to adjust that for the budget. That's I mean, I trust, she's willing to take this on. I'd love to see what she's gonna do with it and what the numbers will look like.
He was just, he does the rodeo. I don't do the rodeo, but he was telling me that the rodeo tends to break even. Is that right? Do you think it will this year, or do we need to plan for it to not?
Yeah, I mean, it's getting pushed. the last couple of years as far as staying.
So just to play devil's advocate a little bit, is that breaking even on your expenses or the overall expenses, including the city's contribution? Because I know we,
That's including the city's contribution.
okay,
Okay,
okay.
so
And that pays for the rodeo ticket sales, pays for pretty much all our expenses for the rodeo.
I'll bring this to you, and there could be some things in here. I thought we purchased a storage container because these guys were storing a lot of the stuff for the rodeo in their garages, and so we purchased a storage container that may have went into this one of these years. I emailed this to you, Cody. I don't know if you saw it.
Today,
Yeah, I'll bring you a copy.
Austin, is there supposed to be a way to charge things up here? Okay. that is in there. Thing right in there.
You can pop that off thing off the side. Yeah. You can pop it up, yeah.
I'll just do that without it for the minutes. This will interface now with whatever you plug into. If you plug it into the charger, like my business phone, theoretically, now that computer has access to all my contacts and any information. So I'd rather see us have some kind of.
Well, you don't have to plug it in.
My thought is, it sounds like we can spend
You mean, will it still access it?
20,000 for each year. and
If you just
something
plug it in
like
as a
that.
charger,
And
I think
it doesn't
all,
seem like-
anything you plug
I mean,
into
it
has the
seems like-
capacity to pull information
I
from
have no
whatever
idea.
you're using.
These methods-
Sorry, guys, we're taking a
I
little
just know
break.
He's got a lot of connections, so that's.
We probably ought to get back together. We've
I
got
don't
25
care.
minutes before this meeting expires.
20.
I'm going by the slow clock over here, I guess.
So-
Okay,
I don't think Jason's had an opportunity. Then I had just a
Yeah.
couple of ideas to float past the council.
Jason, let's give you a chance to speak.
Yeah, I think I appreciate you taking the responsibility on. It's hard to find someone to take and run it, and appreciate you stepping up to do that. The secret is obviously to get good volunteers, because it makes your job a lot easier. And I know you already know some people from your past experience, so that's exciting. I would kind of echo what Greg said, meaning the stage concert is one of the most expensive things. And just from my personal perspective, I think some of that money could be used somewhere else. The team dance, we used to charge for the team dance to get into it. It used to be more controlled under a big tent. Now we've had some issues where people throw things and stuff, and it'd be nice to see maybe a way to maybe you charge for some of these things too. The thing I find is most interesting is some of the most fun things are the ones that really can break even. Like Carla did the tennis tournament for a long time, pickleball, 5K. I did the 5K last year, and it was 450 people there. Mountain bike race by Breezy, hikes. Those are the real fun ones to sign up with as family, and really they don't cost anything. So I would encourage advertising like that, like crazy, and doing that. The rodeo, I'm assuming that the rodeo, they sell the tickets, they use the funds from those tickets, and they put on the rodeo with that. I think they said, is it really break even though? I mean, I know it was in the past, but do we see that this year?
So I believe the 2019 year shows it was in the whole like 12 grand, or the actual cost was 12 grand after revenues are considered. But I'm sure that's the year that we bought that storage container and had some expenses there. And I'm pretty sure that we dumped that in that category. So that would have skewed that. It looks worse than it really was.
And I would probably don't want to even look at the 2019 numbers. I understand it was nice that I appreciate Greg putting those together, but that was a really abnormal year. 2018, 2017 would be better to compare the numbers to, because obviously we had a couple of snafus that happened there that pushed those costs, I think, and profitability down.
So just on that point, Jason, to be clear, that pie chart that Greg put together, that was, if that information came from 2017, when Melanie was asked to put a budget together, she went through a list of the events and then put a cost to them. And that's how that 134,000 number came about. So some of those events probably did not even happen in 2018 or 19. But that was the basis for that number that the council voted on in 2017.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Jason. Are we going to have any need for a vote or a motion tonight?
What I was going to suggest, we actually have a 5th Tuesday this month, so we have 3 weeks until our next meeting. If Cammie and Cody and that other guy over there, my mind just went blank.
We have a meeting on the 23rd, right?
Yeah,
2 weeks.
Bob, if,
We have a meeting on the 23rd.
yes, I apologize.
Okay.
So
Sorry.
if 2 weeks is enough, that you guys could come back with kind of a budget, kind of a list of events. It's easy for the rodeo because it's the rodeo, Alpine days, the things that you think you would like to incorporate, and then just an estimate of what that might cost. And then maybe consider a number more at that point in time, after you've heard the input from the council tonight.
Yeah.
My big concern was, we're 4 months away from the event. I do that.
No,
math right?
we're-
Five
For
months.
5 months.
5 months away from the event. If there's some of those items that you need to get committed right now that we know will be part of the event, like fireworks, I think we need to give Cammie the green light to take care of that now.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Some of the other things that maybe there's a little more room, stock contractor would be another item that you'd need to get committed right away.
Yeah, and we signed a contract with them, but what I was wondering is, in this whole discussion, is there any contingency based on pandemic? I mean, I know we're hoping the best, but.
Well, and that's the decision we had to make this time last year. We saw that train coming down the tracks and realized that we didn't want to take the risk
So we've
of
given thought to that.
committing and then having to cancel once we'd already spent all of our money. So, favor contracts that don't require a payout until the event, but it is what it is. We're going to have to take some risk, but I think we accept some of that risk, seeing kind of where things are headed. Obviously, we can hit another spike, but with vaccinations increasing and things becoming better and better and people just willing to take more risk in getting out, I think we're pretty sure we're going to have an event. I mean, I'm myself, I'm 100% sure we're going to have an event. Whether it has to be scaled back or not, we just have to adjust to the times.
There's either a House or a Senate bill that passed, and I meant to go find it. I just found out about it today, but then I ran short on time.
Yeah.
That basically says everything's getting back to normal. I know Highland is aware of it. They're planning on everything being back to normal May 1st in their city. So.
And the state is looking at April 10th to eliminate the mask mandate, and there's a lot of things happening. I don't think I'm going to concern myself much with the possibility of canceling.
Yeah.
I think it's going to happen. No, in the interest of time, we've got to move forward. We've got to move on. But one more quick suggestion, to Jason's comment earlier, I actually would favor eliminating the teen dance. And I know that's hard to say because the teens have missed out on a lot of socializing, but it has created a lot of problems in the past. And I think taking a time out and skipping a year is something that would be, I'd consider. And that would eliminate some of the cost and some of the, in some cases, some of the ugliness that has followed that event. Anyway, that's my own editorial. So let's move on unless you feel like we need a motion. It sounds like we're going to hear it again when we come back with more of a budget.
I'll just work with these guys for the next couple of weeks.
Okay, good. On the next agenda item, the interlocal agreement. Shane, how much time do we really
Thanks,
need
you
on
guys.
that? And is it something that we could maybe push to the next meeting?
We can push it to the next meeting. Yeah, that's
Okay.
fine.
So I just need a motion to do that. Jessica, if you wouldn't mind making a motion, if you would like, on pushing that item.
would it be table or push?
Table, yeah. Or
I don't
reschedule.
even know which one it is, sorry.
It's C, isn't it?
Resolution R 2021-04.
R 2021-04 till the next city council meeting.
A second to the motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I,
I,
Okay, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to item D. Get an update on the Lambert Park security at the end of Moyle Drive.
Basically, we've worked with our safety supplier on some flexible bollards. They're actually waiting for a shipping quote. I'm thinking these, just looking at some other things online, they're gonna be around $300 a piece. He asked how many, I told him 24. And then there'd be installation on top of that. So they're a 4-inch diameter bollard. They flex at the base. There's a base that goes underground, and then above that, there's this pivot point on a kind of a spring-loaded system, so they can be ran over and come back up. So not a huge cost. That would plan for a few extras because there could be an issue and have something need to be replaced. So we'd have some on hand. I hope to have that by the shipping quote by today and everything, but it did not make it. So we are working on that. Any questions?
What are we looking at from the people you're looking for that quote to come from? What are they telling you on delivery date?
I don't have that information right now. That will come with a quote, but I can tell you most materials are taking a little bit longer right now to get here.
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of. I think we're pretty much unanimous in wanting to see that happen just as quickly as possible. So I guess if we can get a couple of bids and use calendar as one of the parameters of accepting that bid.
Okay. And I can email the information out as soon as I get it. I'm sure I'll have it this week. So,
Okay, great.
Yeah. So we are, moving along on that.
Good. I appreciated Jessica alerting me to some traffic up there. I went up and spent part of Saturday morning, and Jessica met me up there, and we didn't see a single car except one, and that was a cop who was patrolling. And so I was happy to see that. But I'd love to hear from Brian. He and I spoke a week and a half ago or so about increasing patrol up there, and writing citations. So we hope to write some citations, and I'll say that out loud just because I think it needs to be clarified that it is illegal to drive on that road. And so we will write those citations until the problem goes away. Chief, sorry, Carla, go ahead.
Oh, I just had a question for Shane. If we're making any headway with Apple Maps, whether they were switching their routes so it doesn't go through that road.
Jed is the one that made those calls before. I'll have to follow up with him and see what he knows about that. I'll see what I can find out.
Maybe he could send an email out to the council and let us know what's going on
Yeah.
with that. Reed, would you like to say anything on this topic?
Shane and I reviewed this on Monday as part of our staff meeting, and I just echoing his comments there. So I think this is probably our least invasive solution from a public safety perspective, and probably accomplishes what we need to. I hope that's the outcome anyway.
Yeah, because I think we're equally concerned about the people in the park being safe. And so hopefully this does keep the traffic out, because I think I shared with you, Chief, that I've had a very close call with a four-wheeler moving really quickly through the park as I came out on a trail. And I think there's been a number of close calls inside the park with the interface with motorized. So yeah, I think there's two sides of that safety concern. Never mind, it was irrelevant. Anything else, Chief?
No, thank you.
Okay. Council?
A couple quick things. I went to the first trail committee meeting. It was great committee. And I don't know, with those new signs, did we get I don't know if those are finalized in progress. Did we get a chance to run those by the trail committee just in case they have some suggestions or ideas?
We actually have a draft just over here in the conference room right now that we're reviewing and redlining, and then we'll let them take a look at it
Okay.
as well.
Yeah, great.
So,
And they have had input along the process, but we'll give them one last look at it before it's finalized.
Yeah. And then over by Timberline, some of the signs went in that helped, like the first half dozen, and it seems like it's had, already people are following it. So good progress.
And I've talked to police, to Chief William. We'd like to try to set up a meeting next week with the principal and the chiefs and Tommy.
Yeah.
From the code enforcement standpoint, and just make sure everybody's on the same page. I've asked Greg, since he's been in contact with the principal over the last several months, if he would be there with us on that. So.
Okay, just to pull this back to the issue, the item on the agenda. Do we have any other methods that we can apply to increase the security of these bollards? Because I think, like you said, there may be an incident. I think if I understood, maybe it was Craig that was talking about it before, that if we put cameras on the bollards, that we can't really enforce speed that way, but we can enforce trespass
Vandalism
and vandalism, yes. So I don't know, how does the council feel about that? I'd love to have hidden cameras fixed on those to make sure that we can enforce and protect our property. Anybody object to that or feel like it's not a good idea? Okay, I think let's move forward with that as well. Kind of a game camera kind of setup.
So is the next step, Mayor, for us to get an estimate from Shane so we can make a motion on it, or what's?
Oh, thank you, Jason. Good question. Do we need another motion, or did we already make a motion that moves this forward?
if the council wants to go with those flexible bollards and it's under 15,000, I can
We just do it.
make that expenditure.
Okay. So just to be clear, no further vote necessary. We've already made a decision. We're moving toward the bollards based on the chief's recommendation. That's the best, least invasive way to do it. And as soon as we get them, we can put them in.
Yeah. I mean,
right?
It probably would be good to have a vote on record so we know this was the decision of the council. And I guess tonight it doesn't have to have a dollar figure tied to it.
Yeah. Can we vote on this item though, because it's not listed as a resolution or?
It doesn't need to be a resolution.
Okay.
You say we've decided to go with flexible bollards as the option.
Okay. And authorize the city to install as soon as they're available. Would somebody like to make a motion to that effect?
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve flexible bollards as a safety barrier for Lambert Park, which would include installation of a camera system to also monitor any trespassing or vandalism.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Jason. Bonnie, did you get all that?
I'm still typing. Vandalism and
Trespassing or motorized trespassing.
Okay, we have a motion on the table by Jessica Smeon, which has been seconded by Jason Thielen. Any questions on the motion?
Yeah, I do have a few. Wonder how they're going in, where they're going, and snow removal issues. We didn't have an opportunity to talk about that before.
Yeah.
Because I'm concerned about that.
What do we
Yeah.
know about the snow removal?
So on the snow removal, we did actually, not in this meeting, but in our staff meeting, we discussed that a little bit. And I think just if we end up having a large snowstorm, like a deep snow, which we don't seem to get much anymore,
Yeah.
we would just have to pull up with a snow plow, push as much as we can off the side of the road. And then if we had to, we just have to take a piece of equipment up there and remove the rest of the snow. That's the only thing I can really come up with on that. So, you know, if it's a couple of inches and we are able to turn the blade and push the majority of the snow off the side and there's a couple inches left right there, I don't think it really would need to be addressed.
Yeah. And you're right. We don't seem to get any of those storms anymore.
Not many.
Hopefully that'll change.
Yeah.
Is there any thoughts though, if we do have back-to-back type storms, can we just remove them while we're doing the plowing?
I'm not sure how that, there's an anchor. I'm not sure how it ties together there at the base. But it's kind of in my mind, it's kind of a trade-off of making it as accessible as possible for emergency vehicles in the most timely manner versus maybe some snow issues in the winter when we're less likely to have a fire.
Yeah.
So there's a little give and take on that.
Yeah.
The give, I think, is more in the favor of response time. So
I'm going to remind everyone that we have 3 minutes for this meeting.
Well, I would be more interested though too, before I vote yes for it, on costs on cameras. I'll vote yes for the ballers, but I don't know about the camera thing.
if we're talking the game camera type,
They're a couple $100.
Okay.
Yeah, it's cheap.
$200 to $300 each.
Yeah.
And they're motion sensitive, so it doesn't record anything that's not needed.
I think for $200 a camera, you could actually get one that you can look on your cell phone at the
Okay.
pictures. So
Yeah.
pretty inexpensive. that
Okay.
way.
All right. So sorry to rush us along, but we have a motion on the table. If there's no further question, we'll put it to a vote.
Who seconded that motion?
Jason Thielen. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
I,
Hi,
Carla, did I hear you?
Yeah, I think I went the same time as Greg.
Okay. All right. So we have a unanimous vote. The motion passes. Thank you very much. Okay, just take a minute or two to do staff updates. Shane?
Yeah, and we do need just a really quick executive session. We need some
Okay.
direction on an
Yeah.
item
Right.
regarding litigation. So
Okay.
real quick, just have to ask this question. Is the council interested at all in ranked choice voting?
No,
I'm not.
Okay.
It's gone terribly bad in some cases
Okay, I'm good.
recently.
Does the council have any mind to have some kind of an
Carly, you are so funny.
have you guys read any of the stories about
It's
ranked
horrible.
choice voting?
Yeah,
Like what's happened
I'm
when they've
just reading-
actually applied it? It
I think-
sounds great, but in practice, it's not effective.
It should be abolished, I think.
If
I'm
you
good
are
with that, Carly.
interested,
It's just funny to listen to you. The last time we went over these two.
I'm not promoting it at all. Someone called and asked, and
They'll never stop.
Bonnie, and anyway, Payson City did it. If anybody wanted, they said it worked out, but
You know,
it's confusing to me, but
Vineyard did it too.
anyway. Does the council have any mind to have like any kind of incentive for staff to get vaccinated? There are some cities that are doing that. I haven't in my mind went one way or the other.
I guess my personal feeling is being protected from the illness is probably pretty good motivation. I mean, I don't mind paying staff time if they have to leave work and go get it.
Mhm.
I just feel like the motivation should be there on their own. It shouldn't have to be financially stimulated to do it. I
think if you wanted to have an incentive program, I think it's as much to, maybe you have an individual that doesn't want to do it. It's as much to protect other people as that individual. If you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And some are doing it, some aren't. I just thought I'd just plant the seed and let you think about that a little
Does
bit.
council feel differently? Anybody?
No.
Feel free to speak. Personal choice on that.
Yeah.
I
I mean, me personally, I would prefer that everyone get vaccinated, but I also realize that people have their individual rights and freedom to choose. So, I mean, are you saying there's individuals that normally would not get vaccinated, but if they're incentivized that they would? Because I thought there was a case, because I thought there was a case going on now that I read. Where was it? Where there was a company that was requiring people to get vaccinated and they're being sued.
Yeah, it was a large company. It was one of the big chains.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know I've talked to a few cities that have looked into it. You can do it there. You have to be careful on how you do it.
Yeah.
But like Spanish Fork City, my understanding is they were going the direction of, we were required at one time to pay people to be in quarantine. That expired December 31st. So they're telling their employees, if you get vaccinated and you come down with COVID, that we will pay that 2-week.
That seems,
or something like
seems
that.
more fair.
Some are saying, we'll give you half day off work to go get vaccinated, or those type things. So anyway, think about it. We don't have to decide right now, but
I like the Spanish Fork, how they handled that. I really do.
I thought it was a good idea.
Yeah, we really do.
Yeah.
Thank you. Jessica just brought up an important point. We're going to need a motion because we're going over time. And so I would welcome that motion.
Okay, I'll make a motion to extend council meeting to take care of business and the executive session, and to end whatever time that would need to be ended past 9
No,
o'clock.
you need to set a specific time. Do a cut time.
Say 9:20. Is that fair?
We've been doing it every week. Come on, guys. I can't believe we didn't end at 9 tonight.
Not to extend past 9:20.
I thought we were going to get there, Carla. I really did. I was hopeful.
I'm disappointed.
I'll second that.
9:20. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Nay.
Jason, did you vote?
I voted yes.
Okay, so motion passes 4-1. I'll let you guess who the one was.
Okay, I'll keep this moving so we can move along. So with the
Just
new
kidding, Carla.
coronavirus money, I have not seen the details yet, but there is a spreadsheet that the government issued. Have you seen this, Troy? I just saw it just today, actually. They have us eligible for up to 1.17 million.
I don't understand how they got to that number.
It's all based on population.
Yeah. So I won't go into my own feelings about that, but we're just giving out money like it's free.
I can send what I have, which isn't a lot. These funds can replace lost revenue, but
Lost revenue.
right. And a lot of cities are in that same boat. I don't know if you can say we're replacing lost revenue from Alpine days, but we didn't have any expenditures. So I don't feel right about that either. But there will be some other things. I did see something that for water infrastructure that it could apply.
There's our affordable housing subsidy right there.
Yeah.
Technically, that is lost revenue.
Let's see. So in this case, the money, since we're under 50,000 population, the money would go to the state. And then the state has, I think 60 days. State would have 30 days to disperse those funds. So the feds, after this is officially passed, have, I think, 60 days to give the money to the states. The state has 30 days to give it to cities under 50,000 population. If you're over 50,000 population, you get a direct appropriation. And the state has no hand in changing the formula.
Hmm.
On how that all works.
Can we wait until Alpine days to take the count?
Yeah.
No,
So like I said, I couldn't find a ton of information on this, but anyway. So we'll have more information, I'm sure, by the next meeting.
So I didn't read into it that it was guaranteed money. Is it guaranteed to?
The way I read it is you potentially qualify for up to, it's like you're
Yeah.
pre-qualified for that much, but then you have to meet certain
Right.
stipulations to actually get it.
So potentially, our greatest potential is that amount, but we would likely end up in a lower.
Yeah.
Because I think that, I mean, if they're not, they've got to take a look at the actual revenues and losses in order to, that's got to be part of the qualification
I would
process.
think so.
It's like a debt to income ratio.
yeah, but that is so fair that they're delineating between population of 50,000 or less. So those cities with over $50,000, they automatically get that allocated no matter what.
Yeah, and see, in the last round of money, Salt Lake and Utah counties were the only two counties that got direct appropriations. Everything else went through the state, and then they broke it up into thirds. And so
Yeah.
some of those communities weren't too happy about that. Because anyway, we'll
So
get more information.
Will it be the same process where we look at if there's a need in the community, or you're not sure what that is gonna entail?
That's what I couldn't find a ton of information about at this point. But I did see something that said like water and like, I think it said fiber infrastructure.
I like that one.
So
Yeah.
Fiber infrastructure actually does have a benefit to the whole community, and it is, I mean, in theory, it gets more tangible tools to people who are less fortunate.
yeah.
Whether that applies in Alpine is another argument.
Can we throw
So-
the money towards water so that our water source is more stable? As far as, I know we're already doing stuff with our well and, cleaning it out with more throughput, whatnot, but Shane, I'm serious. We need to use up this money. We're gonna come up
Yep.
with ways. I don't want to give it back to the state. I'd rather see it being allocated and being used for Alpine City than having us have to give it up and give it back to the state.
I'd rather see taxpayers keep their own money.
Yeah, I feel bad.
I
for
would
my
too, but that's not
grandchildren.
gonna happen. That's not gonna happen.
Not in this environment, it's not.
It's not gonna
It blows me
happen.
away how suddenly the anti-socialists are total socialists. Sorry, I'm gonna get way deep into
Oh.
this argument.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Okay,
So-
9:20.
When we have more information, we'll get it to you. Is there any interest from the council to go to the Utah League Convention,
April?
April 21st through the 23rd?
I would have thought about it, but the precautions are so strict that no.
I may go. I've got to
Just if anyone plans to go, we need to get hotels soon because they go really
Down in
fast.
St. George.
yeah.
What are the dates again?
I'll go.
April 21st through the 23rd.
Okay. I might be interested. I keep planning to go every year and haven't made it. I'd like to go before I leave.
So if you want to communicate to me or the front office, we can make the arrangements and
Yeah. Okay.
get everyone that wants to go registered.
Okay, thanks.
Lone Peak budget will be available to the council the end of this month. And those are the items I have other than the executive session that are important
Okay.
tonight.
All right. Bonnie, did you have anything you need to bring up?
Yeah, I have something for everybody to sign. And I've emailed everybody to come in and sign it. And Greg came in to sign it.
I'm so sorry. I totally forgot.
Sorry, I'll be in.
Okay, it's on your desk, right? there.
Okay. Oh, this is it?
Yep,
In here?
thank you.
Okay.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Bonnie. Austin?
Just some quick updates, so. Mic's not on. Okay, so just a couple quick updates. The Planning Commission is scheduled to be discussing the large animal ordinances was sent back to them. That'll be on the agenda for next week. Also, they'll be discussing the plat amendment of the Summit Point subdivision. That's back again, so That'll be discussed, be a public hearing.
Another one.
And then we have a couple of subdivisions and exceptions that'll be coming. So just kind of heads up of what's coming down the pipe for future city council meetings.
Do we keep record of how many plat amendments are done? Like, who has the record? Sorry. All right. Chief Thompson, did you have anything?
Just a reminder of the Public Safety Board meeting tomorrow morning, 7:30. And then just information, we have lost a couple of full-time employees, have replenished those with part-time staff that have transitioned to full-time. And then the individuals that left was one of our fire captains. He went to Orem. We've promoted an internal candidate. His name's John Pollock, and he is one of our paramedics. He's our newest fire captain. And just as Shane mentioned, in the middle of budget and trying to work through some of those items. That's it.
Thank you, Chief. Hiram and Craig. Anything?
Nothing but the executive session.
Okay. Then council. Real quickly, we'll move through council. Lon, do you have anything? Jessica, do you have anything?
Just something super quick, just maybe pivot, don't get rid of the dance, but Craig and I think maybe like a line dance or a proctored square dance, maybe daddy daughter dance,
Something the
maybe
teens would never come to.
never dare would they show up, but still keep
Yeah.
it.
Okay,
Okay. I don't know.
Nothing, thanks.
Okay.
thank you. Jason, did you have anything?
Nothing from me, Mayor.
Carla?
For me either.
Oh. Carla, you there?
Yeah, nothing for me either.
Okay. Then we'll take a motion
I'll ma-
to go into executive
Yeah, I'll
session.
make a motion that we move into executive session to discuss litigation.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Lon, seconded by Greg. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay, we've got 7 minutes.
For those of participating by Zoom, you'll have to log out and log into the other link that Austin emailed you.
Shane, you don't need me, do you?
No.
Thank you.
Thanks, Reed.
Thanks.